Yesterday, the first pasuk in Dvorim, Rashi had cited that Moshe, these are the last 36 days of Moshe's life. So he's giving them tochocha, he's giving them rebuke for all that transpired over the 40 years. Because once he passes on, no one's there of his caliber to be able to explain to them where they failed. So therefore, he's admonishing them for the past behavior. And when he rebuked Klal Yisroel in a very illusionary way, he referred to locations. And the pasuk goes and delineates Ever HaYarden, Bamidbar, the desert, Arova, Mosuf, Poron, Tofel, Lovon, Chatzeros, Bivzov. So over here we're holding, Rashi explains Bamidbar. What's Bamidbar? Lo Bamidbar are you? At this moment, they're not in the desert any longer, right? They already conquered the territory of Og and Sichon, Elabarvos Moab. They're in the plains of Moab. Umal Bamidbar. Elo Bishvil Mashichisu Bamidbar. He's rebuking them for their misbehavior in the desert, when they were in the desert. They angered Hashem. Shamum Yitim Hussein Bamidbar. Right? There was a time, there was no water, there was no mon. And they said to Moshe, we're going to die in the desert. Barovo. What's Arova? Shechotu bebalpor v'shita barvis Moav. Arova, when did they sin with the Balpor? It was in the plains of Moab. This was after Sichon and Og were destroyed. So that's Arova. That's the Arvis Moab, the plains of Moab. What's Mulsuf? Opposite the Suf. Suf is what? Is the Yamsuf, the Red Sea. Amashi Himru B'Yamsuf. They went and they fight Hashem at the Yamsuf. They started to complain. They said to Moshe, there are a lack of graves in Egypt that you took us here to die because they were caught between the sea and the Egyptian armies. What is this referring to? Rabbi Yochanan says he went and he researched all the psukim. There's no location which is known as Tofel and Lovan. White. I mean, they bickered regarding the month. They said in the 40th year, what did they say? Lechem HaKlokel. This wafer bread, ultimately, we never did our body functions. And this food eventually will expand in our intestines, and we're going to die from it. Rather than appreciating its value, that they didn't have to bother with doing the bodily functions, they complained and said, this ultimately will kill us. And the mo was Lovon. We're already disgusted with this food. Poron is referring to what? The Meraglim. The Chatzeros. What's Chatzeros? Machlokos shel Korach, Davarach Amalem. Lochem lilmo b'masher asisi lemirim b'chatzeros. You should have taken the lesson. Remember, the Torah juxtaposes the story of the Meraglim to Miriam becoming a leper. What do we learn from the juxtaposition? That although the Meraglim saw what happened to Miriam, they saw and they did not take Musar. And you spoke against Hashem. What's these of? He rebuked them now on the Egel. When they left Egypt, they left with an abundance. I mean, not to be believed how much gold they had. So here God gives you all this gold. What should you do with the gold? Go use it against him? Or we say Zekelu Baveu, to extol him, to do it the mitzvah in the most elaborate way. Because he gave you so much gold, You felt empowered and you did the egel. Shenemar v'kesef yibisi lo v'zovos l'bal, because I gave them abundance of silver and gold, therefore they used it for the Baal for idolatry. This goes into kochi yodi osli sachai lazer. When a person feels empowered, you believe that your decision is the right decision, and you bolt from Hashem. So when does a person have that sense? When a person feels secure and feels independent, that he feels he needs no one, that's when a person bolts. So Hashem says, because I gave you so much gold, you did the egel, and it says also because they had an abundance of silver and gold, they worshipped the Baal, the idolatry. We'd mentioned him, Rameir Simplov-Vinsk. Bracha Rishona is rabbinical. The pre-bracha before we eat is rabbinical. After you eat and you sated, that's a doraisa. V'chalta v'savota v'irafta. Birchas hamazon is doraisa, it's their obligation. So Mara says, why? So Mara says, when a person's hungry, this is the way Rameir Simplov explains it. A person feels needy and wanting, he's more humble, naturally more humble. When you're humble, it's clear you understand the hand that feeds you. When a person is sated, a person has a certain level of contentment and a sense of independence, that's when a person tends to bolt. That's kochvi yotzi otzim yodi osli eschai lazer. So therefore, the obligation of Birchas Hamazon is when you feel that satiation, you have to trace it to its source. That's the Birchas Hamazon. Not to think for a moment, because right now you're in a danger zone. When you feel that complacency, that satisfaction, at this moment, says now you have to identify the source of that satisfaction, of that contentment. When a person's hungry, he doesn't have that sense of complacement, of contentment, therefore he has more clarity. Therefore, Bracha Rishona is not required on the Torah level, it's purely rabbinical. That's how Rameir Simplov explains tomorrow in Brachos. The same thing. Dizov, because he had such an abundance of gold, he felt so independent, so secure, that's when you defy God. Because you feel, I can do what I want. I have to listen to nobody. It's very interesting. The Gemara says in Brachos, when Hashem said to Moshe, I will destroy the Jews, because they did the Chet Egel, Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, factually speaking, you're at fault. You're at fault. You can't blame them. What is it analogous to? A father goes and he tells his son to go to the bathhouse, put on his finest, gives him a gold chain to wear and gives him a purse of gold, and tells him to walk in front of a brothel. Do you expect your son not to go into the brothel? You created a setting which every level of enticement is there. He just has to fall off the cliff. By you giving them so much money, so much gold, so much wealth, you touch that nerve in them that they're out of control. So they can't be fully faulted for the Chet Egel. This is Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, Dizov, the same words. When he speaks to Hashem, the words Dizov means Daizov. He's using it as a defense. He's speaking as an advocate. When he speaks to Klal Yisroel, he's using this as a rebuke. After Hashem gives you so much, is that the way you behave? It's interesting. The same statement could be used as a defense and could be used as a rebuke against the person who actually failed. Because this point of Dizov, Moshe is using it as a criticism of Klal Yisroel when he speaks to them. But yet, when he went as the advocate for the Jews that Hashem should not destroy them, he says, Dizov. The beginning of Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu is reviewing events over the past 40 years. to point out their vulnerabilities. As you failed in the past, you could fail again. A person is not aware of the past, that he has certain vulnerabilities. He goes blindly, believing he's on solid ground. Moshe, and we say people do have short memories. And many of the people here were not alive at Kriyas Yamsuf. This is 40 years later. This is the new generation. A minority of these people were there. They were less than 20 years old. So they knew what happened. Their parents shared with them what happened at Kriyas Yamsuf, the Meraglim, whatever it was. It's going back 39 years ago. Nevertheless, Moshe Rabbeinu has to reiterate it and re-emphasize it, because as we failed in the past, we're open to fail again. Now, the Yetzer Hara doesn't go away. The Chofetz Chaim writes that the Yetzer Hara is in operation 24/7. The Gemara compares the evil inclination to a fly. A fly comes and whizzes by you. What do? You swish it away. What happens? Does it go away? No, it comes on the other side. As much as you push it away, unless you kill it, it's coming back. That's a fly. The Yetzer Hara, as long as you're alive, he's trying to trip you up 24/7. Every moment, there's an issue with him. And you have to be aware of it. And therefore, the Gemara tells us in Brochos, Divrei Torah tzricha chizuk. The Torah needs strengthening. You have to review, you have to reflect continuously. And that's the Gemara in Bava Basra, why a person has to make a cheshbon nefesh, right? We learn from the story of Bo cheshbon nas cheshbon shalom. You always have to do a personal introspection. Because when we look at ourselves, we think we're in pretty good standing. But factually, when you start looking yourself in the mirror, you realize there's quite a bit that has to be corrected. But if you let it accumulate, it becomes a problem. So as we say, you have to nip it in the bud. So how do you nip it in the bud to make the correction before it gets too complicated? By introspecting every day and making the cheshbon nefesh, taking an accounting of your behavior throughout the day, we continuously make corrections. Because firstly, we don't see ourselves that we failed because we look at the totality of ourselves. So the same thing, Musar. Moshe Rabbeinu has to give them Musar, has to rebuke them, admonish them about their past failings. Because as I said, if it happened in the past, it could repeat itself again. The same vulnerabilities of the past, they repeat themselves because it's a reality it's the human condition. So a person always has to hear exactly where he stands, and he has to be trained. A person goes into basic training. He's taught all the pitfalls of what battle is and what he has to be aware of. And and the longer he survives battle, the better he gets at it because he's more adept and he understands exactly what battle conditions are and what he has to be sensitive to and what's not obvious to this person being a well-weathered soldier. He's aware what's going on. And he will share this with other people to share that experience that they should be aware of the blind spots when you go to battle. We're in battle mode, as the Or Chaim HaKodesh writes by Eshes Pastora, it says, Kisetzil Muchama al Yevecho. When you go to war against your enemy, and he explains it on an illusory level, that the greatest enemy of the Jew is the Yetzer Hara. That's the enemy, and you have to be aware of it. And if you're aware of it, how he can snag you and ensnare you and mislead you, then you have a chance to survive. But if you're not, you have no chance. He can run rings around us, convincing us that the mitzvah, the Avera is the mitzvah, and the mitzvah is the Avera. Therefore, you have to take every precaution and whatever we have available to us to give us clarity to be able to deal with the terrain and the experiences of life. The two expressions in the Gemara, there's a person who's not makir tova, and there's a person who's kofui tova. Not makir tova means you don't recognize the good I did for you, but you're not an ingrate. Then you have a person who's an ingrate. What are the two blaring examples of an ingrate? Hashem creates a wife for Adam, who's Eza Kenegdo. That's his ultimate gift. That's the basis for success. And after he eats of the Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, Hashem says, why did you eat of the tree of knowledge? So he says, God, it's your fault. You gave me this wife. So you know what Hashem says? You're an ingrate. You're a kofi tova. I gave you a wife, which is the ultimate, and now you're faulting me that it's my fault because I gave you a wife. She's the one who caused you to sin. That's kofi tova. The second example of kofi tova is in the 40th year when the Jews complained about the man. And they said, we've had enough of this man. For 40 years, we've been eating it, and it hasn't left our systems. Ultimately, it's going to, has anybody ever heard something goes into your intestines and doesn't go out? Ultimately, it will expand, and our intestines will burst, and we're going to die. So Hashem says, Kfuye Tova b'nei Kfuye Tova. Your ingrates that descend from an ingrate. Adam was the first ingrate. When he said, Ha'isha shesati modi, he faulted Hashem for giving him the wife. And the second ingrate, you people, here I gave you the one which is the ultimate gift, and you claim you're going to die from it. So the Kfuye Tova b'nei Kfuye Tova. That's the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. What's a Kfuye Tova? The Gemara tells us in Psachim that if you find chametz on Pesach, you have to take a vessel covered over, because there's a concern you may come to eat it. So what do? The words used in the Gemara, kofa oleh kli. You take a vessel, turn it over, upside down to cover it. Kofa means to turn upside down. You overturn it. A person's not makatova. You know, we say people have short memories. I've done for you so many favors. How do you not reciprocate? People have short memories. That's a person's not makatova. You don't appreciate sufficiently the favor I did for you, therefore you don't reciprocate. Kofui tova means when I do you a favor, especially if something special, and rather than seeing it as it should be seen, you see it as a detriment, that I created you a problem. I'll give you an example. Person asks you money for investment. And as a result of that, he goes into debt, which drives him to bankruptcy. The one who lent him money interest-free, he didn't tell him what to do with the money. He didn't advise him. So he has a claim against him. He says, if you wouldn't have lent me that money, I would have all this financial debt. I would have gone to bankruptcy. It's because you offered me the money. You ever hear such a thing? That's kofui tova. Here, I did you a favor. You should see it in the positive, and you're turning it around, and you tell me I gave you the gun to commit suicide. That's exactly what Adam did. Seeing it backwards. I give you a wife, which is the ultimate, and you say, no, the basis for your demise and setback is Hashem because he gave you such a wife. Hashem gives you man, which is the ultimate, that you shouldn't have to do your bodily functions, to go out of the camp, to bury your waste, and be plus many other values, and you say, no, it's ultimate, it's going to kill you. Seeing it backwards, taking it and inverting it, and putting it in negative, that's kofui tova. And that's Lavan. The Jews at Lavan, when he gave them the white wafer food, which was the ultimate, they said, it's going to kill us. You people are kfuye tova, and you're actually exhibiting the characteristic of Adam, who was the kofui tova.